Welcome to The Way Home with Laura Smith, the show that brings you wonderful guests, helpful advice, and uplifting stories. The Way Home. Live inspired. Here's your host, Laura Smith.
Well, there's a lot of people out there who are practicing law and also having experience working with lawyers and such, but I haven't ever really heard someone say they absolutely love going through the process, whether it's trying to get themselves out of a jam or taking someone else to court or whatever it is. Law hasn't always been made as fun as it could possibly be. But you haven't met Danny Karon yet. Danny Karon has an amazing law profession of 30 years of experience already. He helps both the plaintiffs and the defendants in class action lawsuits and individual cases. He teaches class action litigation at the U of Michigan Law School and Ohio State University Moritz College of Law. And he also previously taught at Columbia Law School. Very prestigious, all amazing. You think he would be old and very boring, but he's anything but. And he has written a fabulous quintessential book on how to make law accessible to you, how to use it to your advantage, and to get you through all the hard stuff with making you laugh. It's called Your Lovable Lawyer's Guide to Legal Wellness, Fighting Back Against a World That's Trying to Cheat You. Danny Karon, you've got me laughing and the show hasn't even started yet.
Well, you've left me nothing to say. Why? What a plug. That's great. I'll do my best to live up. And you know what? I'm going to live up because we got a lot of good stuff to talk about.
I know we do. Why did you set about writing Your Lovable Lawyer and putting the word love in there?
You've kind of suggested the point. You know, the law doesn't have to be intimidating or evasive or elusive. It should be accessible to people because the law is a right, not a privilege reserved only for rich folks who can afford lawyers. Everybody should have access to justice, and people don't tend to get it. And I observed after 35 years in practice what I call a societal bias against access to justice, where people who deserve it the most really tend to get it the least. And that means they can't spot legal issues. They don't know when they have legal problems. If they do, they don't know how to resolve them. If they do, they don't know who can help them resolve them or how to find a lawyer, much less pay for a lawyer or even understand a lawyer, what with our own language and all legalese. I mean, it makes you want to throw up. So I figured, you know what? Why not bring this content and this aptitude directly to folks to help them out of legal jams or to avoid legal jams to begin with in a fun and friendly way? Because it's something that you can digest. It's something that you don't have to necessarily go to law school to learn. It's almost like a DIY law degree that I relate and deliver in the book. And it's all the secrets that lawyers don't want you to have, because the lawyers make money spending time working on these cases for folks. And I want people to know how to work on these cases for themselves, if not how to avoid them to begin with, which would be the best remedy. So that's all baked into the book.
Yeah. And you teach that also wherever you go. So how do you use that within the work that you do? I guess teaching as a professor at universities, you got to kind of bring it not down to their level, because I'm sure there's a lot of really brilliant college students out there, but you got to make it accessible, right?
You do. You have to make it accessible. You got to make it entertaining, because if you're not keeping people interested and entertained and leaning forward, they'll be on their phones in 2 seconds. Then you've lost them. They'll have no idea what brilliance you related, because they don't care. Now, it doesn't have to be intimidating. It really doesn't. The law is ubiquitous. It's everywhere. It's around us. We need to learn to deal with it and accept it and work within it and not ignore it. To that end, I kind of consider my brand as like the iPod of wellness, which is to say, your life was fine without me, but once you got me, aren't you better off with it? You know, because it's just this great content that people don't know exists. And you don't want to learn about it too late after you've stepped into something. And that's what I observed actually on, say, like daytime TV and on the internet. I saw that there was a lot of emotional wellness content out there, like Dr. Phil talking about how to be safe and sound in your mind and body. And there was also a lot of financial wellness content out there, like Jim Cramer, Susie Orman, how to set up a 529 for your kid or a 401k for yourself. But where it came to that third essential wellness bucket, legal, which, by the way, when it tips, it spills into the other two because you freak out and you go broke. There's nothing there but these exploitative, like, courtroom shows where they preyed on people's misery and misfortune by training the cameras on the courtroom, and things were already, in the toilet, and people were just floundering and doing terrible from what had happened. And I wanted to turn the dial back. I wanted to give and promote content that would keep people out of the courtroom, kind of like if you go to the doctor for a physical, it's to keep from getting yourself physically sick, right? I wanted to deliver people what they needed to administer for themselves a legal physical to keep from getting legally sick. And that's what Your Lovable Lawyer's Guide to Legal Wellness is all about.
And you have so many chapters devoted to all these things that really occur in our daily lives, but we don't realize that we could end up getting caught up in them or scammed or something. And people don't know their rights. They just don't know their rights.
Well, what's interesting is, or worth noting, is that all of the stories and vignettes and letters and examples in the book, they're all real. They're drawn either from what's happened to me or what's happened to friends or clients. I've made up nothing because I didn't have to make up anything. And the airlines chapter, I start with that actually. It's the first substantive chapter. And I include a lot of letters that I used to get what I needed for myself or for others. And that's not to say you're going to have the exact same situation where you're going to use the same letter in the same format or form or order or whatever. But instead, it's just to give you an idea that, one, you shouldn't have a victim mentality. You can do something about this. And two, if you have an airline issue, go to this chapter and draw and pick and pluck from it those pieces and parts that suit your situation, put them in the right order, know you could do something proactive about helping yourself, and go after it. Go for it. You'll most likely get something for your efforts. Why? Because nobody else ever does, and you'll stand out. That's what the airline chapter is about. And you're right. I get into other things. I'll tell you a really important chapter is what to do in an auto accident. I mean, it's going to happen, right? And when it does, a lot of folks don't know what to do, or more importantly, what not to do, because that can be really crippling if, for instance, you end up talking to the other side's lawyer or the other side's insurance adjuster, and they cajole you into admitting that it was your fault when it wasn't. And then you can't undo that because it's on the record, it's an admission, and you're going to affect your case. So I get into the top 10 things you should do when you're in an auto accident. And I even recommend that folks take their phone out and take a picture of the page so they have it handy for when it happens and they know what to do. Just real practical tips like this so that you can navigate your legal life more safely and better than before you had the book, because these issues are out there. You deserve to know what they are.
Oh, that's fascinating. But it's so every day. I would never even think of doing something like that, having something at the ready to know what to do. Because you're right. Especially when you're in an accident or something that happens that feels volatile at that moment, you can't think straight. So, you have to be careful. Now, you have so many different things in here that are talking about landlords and stuff. And I think about my years being a single young person living in New York. And if I could tell the stories I have about landlords, it could be a book in itself. You make your hair curl. I mean, I can't believe the things that they got away with. Simply because I was just young and had no clue to what my rights were or anything. And it's sad. Like I look back on that poor young person that I was and think, wow, was I really taken for a ride? But I think about the millions of people out there that are, and not all landlords are bad, but I just had a whole bunch of them in New York.
Well, a little legal wellness would have helped you. My landlord tenant chapter derives from an incident that happened to my son's buddies when he was in college. This is only a few years ago. His buddies had rented, they're four guys. They rented a place. They didn't treat it so well. So come like Thanksgiving, the landlord took a look and said, you know what, get the hell out of here. Enough's enough. I mean, this is not going to go well. I'm not going to give you this place for the rest of the year. Just get out. We'll sign a waiver waiving any damages. I just need you out of here. And they said, okay. And they signed it and they left. They found a new place for second semester. About, 6 weeks later or so, they get a letter from the landlord, including a contractor's itemized receipt for $30,000 saying these are the costs of the damages we had to repair following your departure. We expect you to pay the whole thing forthwith. And they freaked out. They showed the letter to my son, who sent it to me, said, can you give these guys a hand? I'm like, oh, God, what am I going to say? No. So I take a look, and the first thing I do, of course, is I read the lease. And I ask the guys, did you read the lease? And I knew they didn't read the lease. Of course, who reads the lease, right? Well, I read the lease. They didn't read the lease, but the lease actually contained a lot of really good stuff. For instance, when the landlord was over checking the place out before he kicked him out, he saw a cat. And there was a clause in the lease that said no pets. If there's a pet, it's $150 a month fine. So he ended up adding onto the itemized receipt of charges or list of charges, 4 months worth of cat presents. So now there's $600. So I wrote in a letter to his lawyer, because the lawyer sent the letter. As it concerned the cat, I said, listen, you don't know whose cat it was. You don't know how long the cat was there. You don't know whether the cat was there for the first time. You don't know whether the cat was there and left. You don't know whether there's a, stray cat. It's your burden of proof. You have no idea whether the cat was there for any part of these 4 months you allege it was. So that's $600 that comes right off the top. And I chipped and chipped and chipped away at it. And at the end of the analysis, I think I said, they owe you like $300 and that's all you're going to get. And the guy never got back to me, but instead, I don't know, a month or two later, I get on Zillow just to check out the property, see what's going on. Turns out the landlord had spruced it up himself, and he just sold it for $2 million. It was in suburban D.C. And he wanted my guys to underwrite the repairs associated with his sale of the property. That's what was really going on, and my guys ended up paying nothing. So, a little self-help can go a long ways if that is, you know what to look for. And with this chapter now, if you have a landlord-tenant issue, you will know what to look for.
Yes. And again, you bring it down to it's such a way to be able to understand it. And there's a lot of love in it, too. So you don't feel scared at all. Your Lovable Lawyer's Guide to Legal Wellness, Fighting Back Against a World That's Trying to Cheat You. This is Danny Karon today with his brand new book. I mean, just came out in October, and already lots of people loving on the book and Danny Karon because he's just lovable himself. And I think bringing that into your incredible knowledge and ways to help people, I think was the right recipe. You're right. People are looking for that. You see, Dr. Phil, it's not just the mental wellness that they're getting good advice, but it's the way he approaches it. There's the demeanor about him or whatever. And I think, you being that type of a lawyer, I can imagine. I mean, I have people also when they've gone through divorces and there's child custody issues going on. And sadly, you can see that the one that you love has the worst lawyer, and they're not getting anything that they deserve. And all this, it's going sideways. And I think in that situation, oh my goodness, this is so crucial. You're talking about children here and, who gets to raise them and possible physical dangers and things like that. And you've got yourself a lawyer who just doesn't cut the mustard. So, I mean, just being able to know that, do you give good advice on how to know whether the lawyer you're working with is up to par?
Well, they don't teach bedside manner in law school, and that's a real mistake. They don't teach any sort of practicum or residency in law school either, like doctors get. They instead graduate you and expect you to know what you're doing out in practice, and none of us does. But you've got to take it upon yourself. Got to be really smart, and you've got to connect with people and be kind and understanding, because you're not just an attorney, you're a counselor, and you don't have to be in litigation. I mean, you can be talking to somebody or working through stuff. I have a lawyer who helps with all my Lovable Lawyer stuff because I know what I don't know, and I don't know much from corporate or transactional. So I hire him, and he's just a total straight shooter, totally supportive, total friend, and we work through it together. He sends a bill, of course, which, I never like seeing, but you know what? You gotta pay to play. And, I get what he earns his keep. That's for darn sure. So you really got to be thoughtful and mindful of that, because you have real people with real vulnerabilities and real problems you're helping. In terms of what a lawyer is, for instance, a lot of people say, you're a good lawyer because you're a good arguer. And a lot of people kind of describe lawyers in that kind of context. And I remember had to be 15 years ago. I was in the kitchen at our first house, and my wife had just finished dressing me down, as was typical, still is actually. And she storms out of the kitchen victorious. My little daughter is standing next to me. I didn't even see her there, and she tugs on my pant leg. And I look down at her, and she up at me, and she says, "Hey, Dad, I know why you're such a good lawyer." I said, "Well, why in the world do you think is that?" And she says, "Because you're such a good arguer," right? Arguing. And I thought about that, and I knelt down, and I looked at her, and I said, "Listen, sweetie, I don't think a good lawyer means to be a good arguer. I think being a good lawyer means to be a good problem solver." And that's what we're vested with the privilege of doing every day for folks, to solve their problems in a kind and gentle and accessible way so that they feel good about the results. And if you're hard-headed and bullish, you're just not going to get through. But if you can connect with folks and relate a good, thoughtful, meaningful, supportive message, I think you're going to be okay. And that's what I tried to bake into my practice for 35 years, and I infuse that same vibe into the book. So I hope it's accessible that way, and that was really what I was after.
Oh, it totally is. Absolutely. All the different chapters on things that are everyday that people, really should know what they're doing. Fighting back against online offenses. So now this whole world of, the cyber bullying, and then you've got defamation and doxing, invasion of privacy, all these things that are going on. that it's serious stuff. And I think a lot of times people think, I love where you talk about don't just be the victim. You have to see through the problem and know that there is another side to it that you can become victorious in. And I love that angle of it. How do you do that with someone who's really in a really bad bind, or they've got defamation going on where people are making up either lies about them or sending out cyber horrible, pictures where they put your face on your different body and all these kinds of things. With
deep fakes and stuff. The law is not caught up to that yet, by the way. But it's funny. I literally had this come up this morning. I was at breakfast with somebody, and she said she has a friend who's a hairdresser, and I forget what who the merchant was, but maybe she left a hairdresser or whatever, but she posted a bunch of bad Google reviews. And rather than just kind of shaking it off, the merchant sued her for defamation. And my friend who's a lawyer had to get involved and get the case dismissed and thought it would be a walkaway. But no, the merchant doubled down and came back and filed an amended complaint and re-sued her. And now this woman is she's in it. She's defending herself. And thankfully, she has a friend, my friend I was with this morning, who's defending her for free. But I would move the dial back and suggest doing what's necessary to avoid getting that pickle to begin with. And like it or not, I say in the book, I never post a bad review. It is not worth it. No, first of all, nobody cares. It's kind of like you wouldn't care so much what people thought of your opinion if you knew how seldom they did. And no one's going to be affected by what I say about a restaurant, except for the restaurant owner, and I don't need to look for a lawsuit. So who cares? I'll fight another battle somewhere else where there's more accountability and less precariousness, and let it go. This woman, had she read the book, she would have known not to do. Oh, I'll give you a better one. She would have known not to say something. How about this? Amber Heard. Amber Heard would have done well from a little dose of legal wellness, because had she known just this much about the elements of defamation under Virginia defamation law, because, by the way, her case with Johnny Depp was not a spousal abuse case. It was a defamation case. Had she known what the law required to prove defamation, she wouldn't have posted her op-ed, because she would have known that, I'm getting too close to the line. Why go there? And had she not posted it, she would have saved the $1 million in settlement that she ended up paying Johnny Depp. That's what it settled for on appeal. And the anywhere between $9 and $15 million projected in attorney's fees she paid for the privilege of paying $1 million to Johnny Depp. Had she simply known what not to say, because my grandma always told me you can't go wrong with your mouth shut. And that's one of my tenets of legal wellness that I described in my keynote that supports the book. And people think they can say anything they want and take refuge, say, in the First Amendment, which they can't. It doesn't protect, it doesn't cover private entities. It's got limitations. People have no idea what they're talking about when they say
involve threats.
Yeah. Nope, yeah. That is not a smart way to proceed. And these defamation cases are big money. I mean, look at the cases of late. I mean, Dominion Voting Systems, about $1 billion. Alex Jones, $1.5 billion. E. Jean Carroll got multiple millions of dollars. I mean, they are not nickel and dime cases. People file for, through the roof damages in defamation. Do not let yourself be a defamation defendant. Right. Read the book.
But some of them are very, very, very crooked, and they have lawyers representing them and judges who are equally as crooked. And I mean, that's what I'm flabbergasted about, what's happening in just with all these cases and such, where it's very obvious that a judge is predisposed to an outcome that they want, for their side. And that's all the more reason, even so, that's all the more reason to ensure that you avoid the courtroom. Why do you want to even go there? If you're in a jurisdiction where you're not getting a fair shake, I'd be scared to death. And that's why I got a big mouth, but I keep it shut at the right time. Mm-hmm. That's right. But then for some people, they feel like they need to tell their truth. It's not necessarily, they don't see it as defamation. They see it as their opinion and their truth about something that maybe happened. And they deserve to have it, looked at fairly and squarely. I just see a lot of preconceived bias that takes place in a lot of these high profile cases that play out on the news.
Oh, I understand. I'm not disagreeing at all. What I'm saying is that if somebody thinks, it's my constitutional right to have an opinion, to whatever, that's fine. Be my guest. Go ahead. Just realize that if somebody wants to sue you, you don't just flip the switch off and say, what is my opinion? I'm out. You have to prove it. You're litigating. You're defending yourself. You're paying a lawyer $1,000 an hour, and it could take 3 years to win. And what if you won for having spent $500,000 in terms of getting your opinion out, where probably the only person who saw it was the person who sued you. So yeah, it's a calculus. I mean, you're absolutely 1,000% right. You deserve to say what you want to say, but just realize that speech has consequences, and that's what the chapter is really designed to get into.
Right. And we're hearing that so often right now. Speech, everyone's saying, but it's my First Amendment right. It's my First Amendment right. But speech has consequences.
Yep.
And that we're hearing a lot of that.
It may be, but it has consequences.
You have something in here that, everybody needs to deal with, wills and trusts, things like that.
Yeah.
And believe it or not, I actually had a situation. My daughter's father was originally from another country, and he didn't understand the whole concept of that. And he, living in America for 40 years, he's amassed a lot of property and all these things and stuff. He did not have a will.
Oh,
and I was trying to explain to him, you need to have a will, because if you don't and something happens to you, the government can come in, you can, it can not go to whom you want it to or whatever. It took me so long to finally convince him. He finally got a simple will done, and he got it on trade with my next door neighbor who was a lawyer, and he was a stonemason, and he built him a wall or something for the will. But
that works too.
One. He has one though, but I don't know where that lawyer is. And if anything were to ever happen, we don't know what's in the will. And so what would happen on, we don't want anything bad to happen to him. But in 30 years, 40 years, if he passes away, how do people get in touch? Do they have phone numbers, addresses? I mean, everybody's moved since he had that will made. How do they find the people?
You could skip trace them, pay $50 to an investigator, do a skip trace and find the lawyer. What if the lawyer's dead? I mean, there's nothing wrong with updating your will, superseding your will. If you can't find the guy, you might have an issue as it concerns your old will versus your new will. Now, I don't do wills and trusts, but I knew enough to write a chapter on it, of course, and describe the necessity of having both, not just a will, but a trust too. And you have to talk to somebody experienced so that you can fashion an estate plan that accounts for an older will and supersedes it with a new one, and with not just a will, but trust documents, durable powers of attorney, powers of healthcare, all that stuff. Remember the Karon Quinlan, story from got to be 20 years ago now or more, where she, I guess she took some combination of like a weight loss drug and alcohol, and she went into a coma, and her parents wanted to pull the plug, but the doctors didn't. And there was a whole fight about whose call it was to take somebody off life support. And that was like the Karon Quinlan issue that everybody was all worked up about. And now everybody, if you're smart, got durable powers of healthcare, if I'm remembering my documents right. And it's a whole packet, and it's not pro forma stuff, but it's pretty basic stuff, and it's not expensive. We just redid our estate planning documents because we moved from Ohio to Florida, and you got to make sure they're in compliance with the law where you're a resident. And every time, this is kind of paranoid, but every time my wife and I fly, we just came back from Europe, actually, last week. And I send this kind of benign email to my dad, my brother, my son, my brother-in-law. That's like the foursome, that chronicles all of my life insurance coverage and tells exactly where the estate planning binder is, because there's got to be accountability for that stuff.
That's right.
It's a legal issue, to be sure, but it channels through practicality. Like a lot of good an estate plan does if nobody can find it.
That is absolutely right. And you think about people who we forget to, leave somebody who has our passwords or, knows where the important documents are hidden and things like that. Like we're reticent as human beings to think about the worst case scenarios in our lives. So we avoid them altogether. Can
I give you another one? This is related, but thematically the same, just going back to the landlord tenant thing. So one thing I say in the book is, if you want to have some accountability for your living space, what you ought to do is take a video of all parts of your rental before you move in, so that when your landlord says you ruined this and that, and we're taking it out of your damage deposit, you can say, not only did I not, maybe you left it in better shape, But unless you have that backstop, and it's too late once you move in, you don't have anything. So you got to think ahead. And these are that goes back to the iPod issue. I mean, you're perfectly fine without hearing any of this. But once you hear, it's like, God, that's a really good point. I'm going to videotape my next dwelling before I move in. Do it with the landlord there so they can, sign off on it. I mean, these are acts with legal consequences that normal people wouldn't think to know.
That's right. And that's why you call it legal wellness, which I love, because it truly is. it's just staying on top of things that are practical that the average person can do without, dropping a lot of money and getting into the woods on how difficult some of this stuff is to understand. But you truly break it down into such a wonderful way. Again, you're like you said it yourself, like the Dr. Phil of lawyers. But you have this wonderful book that just came out, Your Lovable Lawyer's Guide to Legal Wellness, Fighting Back Against a World That's Trying to Cheat You. So much practical, good advice there with a lot of sense of humor thrown in there. Danny, Karon, you're just like the world needs you. You need your own TV show. You need your own radio show. Really, you are a national treasure. Everybody needs to hear from you, because I think you bring it down and you make it accessible to all of us. And I think you actually care about people in general. So I think that helps a lot.
I'm sure trying. You can find it on Amazon, by the way. And I really appreciate your sharing the importance of the book. I wrote it for everybody, because it's a message everybody deserves.
And everybody will be able to get something from it. It's that kind of book. Once again, Your Lovable Lawyer's Guide to Legal Wellness, Fighting Back Against a World That's Trying to Cheat You. Danny, Karon. Karon is spelled Karon. And the best way to find you on a website is?
YourLovableLawyer.com. Can't miss me. YourLovableLawyer.com. Perfect stuff. Thank you so much. I feel like you just made us all a little bit healthier and well in the legal department and in life. It's a pleasure. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you too, Danny, Karon. Thank you all for listening to The Way Home this week, and to my wonderful guests. And may you all have a wonderful week that is safe, that's happy, healthy, and full of lots of miracles as well. I'm Laura Smith. See you next time from The Way Home.
Podcasts by Federated Media.